Good day. This is James Lactau from the University of Asia and the Pacific. Today, I will be presenting what motivates university students to be in a mentoring relationship, discovering motivations using the organismic integration theory through hermeneutic phenomenology. My co-presenter is my dissertation advisor, Dr. Grace S. Koo. This is the outline of today's presentation. I'll be giving a brief introduction on my motivation, on why I did this research, and also the research question and the significance of the study. Next, I will be briefly discussing the organismic integration theory, which is a mini theory that falls under the self-determination theory of Ryan and Deasy. Next, I'll be discussing the methodology used in this research, then the instrument used, and then the manner of analyzing the data. Next, I'll be talking about the findings of this research, and we'll end with a conclusion and recommendation. So what is the context of this study? Let me just say that my work in the University of Asia and the Pacific involves talking with mentors and talking with mentees. I used to head the Office of Student Mentoring of the University of Asia and the Pacific. And from that perspective, having seen the perspective of mentors and mentees, it dawned on me that there's really a lot of work needed on the mentoring program. What motivated me to work on this dissertation, on this particular topic, is that desire to go deeper into mentoring, and particularly in my country, the Philippines. Mentoring is not as well practiced, or unlike in other countries. There's also very little research done on mentoring. And for the research question, why are mentees motivated to seek out mentoring sessions with their mentors? It is normal that the mentors would seek out the mentees in a mentoring program. But what I'm interested to find out is that why do mentees on rare times seek out their mentors for a mentoring session? This research is a response to go deeper into the motivations of mentees who seek out their mentors in the context of a formal mentoring program in higher education. This study tried to unpack the lived mentoring experiences of students to understand how it is to be in a good relationship with one's mentor and the benefits derived from this mentoring relationship. This study is not intended to generalize the experiences of all mentees, as is the intention of qualitative work, not to generalize. It is focused only on the lived experiences of mentees who participated in this research. Now, as I've mentioned earlier, organismic integration theory falls under the supra theory of self-determination theory by Ryan and Deasy. Self-determination theory states that there are two types of motivation based on one's goals. One type is intrinsic motivation, which is the motivation that comes from activities that one finds inherently enjoyable or interesting. Example would be play. Kids are intrinsically motivated to play. Or when someone enjoys doing something, that is intrinsically motivated. The second type is extrinsic motivation, which is what moves one into action that has a separable outcome. So there's an external motivation that moves us to do something. Now, Ryan and Deasy in 2017 described internalization and integration of values and behavior regulation. This forms part of the organismic integration theory. Now, what is internalization? It is the process of taking in a particular value or regulation, while integration is the process of assimilating this value or regulation so that it becomes something of their own and that it would emanate from themselves. Now, why am I mentioning this? Because these are the two important concepts of this study. Ryan Deasy also mentioned that external motivations could be internalized. but there's a series of processes involved. For example, studying. Initially, studying could be externally motivated, but later on, one finds joy in studying, and we can say that studying becomes internally motivated. How does this happen? And this is explained by the organismic integration theory. The organismic integration theory describes a continuum from amotivation or unwillingness or absence of motivation to intrinsic motivation, which they call the organismic integration theory, as I just mentioned earlier. From motivation comes external motivation in gradation of external regulation, which is an external motivation. Now it becomes more internalized. It's still externalized, but it becomes more internalized in the person. Then it becomes introjection. And further internalization produces identification. And the most internalized of these external motivations is integration. Now, of course, the fullness of integration comes in intrinsic motivation. Okay. Now, these are the trajectory of the organismic integration theory, the external regulation. So we have external regulation and introjection, which is more internal than external regulation. Now, after introjected regulation, we have identification or identified regulation, which is a more internalized form of introjection. Further internalization of identified regulation is integrated regulation. And of course, the fullness of internalization is internal motivation. For this study, I used hermeneutic phenomenological research methodology. It was selected over other qualitative methodologies because of the researchers' interest in going deeper into an understanding of the personal experiences of students who have gone through mentoring as seen by them. And according to Van Manen, since human science assumes that lived human experience is complex than the result of a singular description, and that there is always an element of the ineffable to life. While descriptive phenomenology, which is also a qualitative methodology, and hermeneutic phenomenology, which is what I used for this research, have similar focus and outcomes of the research, including data collection, subject selection, and understanding of the lived experience, these two vary in the position of the researcher and how data are processed. And that is the deciding point on why I, the researcher, chose hermeneutic phenomenology over descriptive phenomenology. Unlike descriptive phenomenology, where bracketing takes place after self-reflection, hermeneutic phenomenology research the researcher of hermeneutic phenomenology will not bracket or set aside one's biases and assumptions, but instead embed them in the interpretive process. Since these biases, knowledge, assumptions are considered essential, the researcher is called to give considerable thought to their own experience and to explicitly recognize the way their positionality, experience, and biases relate to the lived experience being investigated. When it is too difficult to bracket the researcher's assumptions, biases, knowledge, and experience, then descriptive phenomenology is not a good option. Rather, hermeneutic phenomenology is a more fitting methodology to use. According to Van Manen, hermeneutic phenomenology is the human science of studying persons. This research went through a process under the Research Ethics Review Committee of the University of Asia and the Pacific and was found to be ethically acceptable. Consent forms were also signed before the interview took place, and these consent forms were given to the participants or co-researchers, as we would also call them, of this research. So researcher positionality, the researcher is a graduate student, but also a mentor, mentee, teacher, trainer of mentors, and guidance counselor. I have had more than 20 years of mentoring students, kids, and young adults while working as a teacher and guidance counselor in the institutions where the mentees are studying. I got interested in pursuing this topic because I have seen how mentoring has helped me myself, because I am a mentee and mentor myself, and the help that I have seen in some students and how students appreciate the things that their mentors were able to do for them. And at times they're described as life-changing. Aside of the mentoring desks, as I've mentioned earlier at the beginning of this presentation, I've spoken with several mentors and mentees alike for feedback, especially on how to improve the mentoring program. The research site. Initially, the research was done at the University of Asia and the Pacific, where the mentors and mentees are. But later on, because of the pandemic, I had to stop meeting them in the university and had to meet them through Google Meet, through online interviewing, which was permitted by my dissertation advisor. Now, there were 12 participants that were interviewed. 6 were male students and 6 are female students from the same university. These students have had at least 1 year of good mentoring relationship with their mentors. They have had at least 8 mentoring sessions. And these mentees find their mentors as effective mentors and they enjoy their mentoring sessions with their mentors. For the instrument, a semi-structured interview schedule was created to elicit information from participants regarding their mentoring experiences. These interview schedules were checked and validated by members of the dissertation panel and by my dissertation advisor. Inputs from the panel members were integrated to the interview schedule, and the final version was revised and approved by my dissertation advisor. So these are some of the questions that I have asked. These questions actually have follow-up questions in them. So for the introduction, to set the tone, to feel more comfortable, I ask the following questions. To ask students about how, if they can tell something about their student life in the university, or how they find their academic load, or what their first impressions are of the mentoring program. Now, for the second part, which is the bulk of the interview, we focused on the experiences of the mentee on their mentoring. I would ask questions like, what issues and difficulties did they find as students? And then I asked them to tell me about their first mentoring session, to recall how it was. And then also tell me the time when they sought out mentoring, when they were motivated to seek out mentoring. And that's where I will try to figure out their motivations, what motivates them to seek out mentoring. And then to also describe how it is, what is their experience to be a mentee of their particular mentor. And I also ask them about what they think makes a good mentor, the qualities of a good mentor. And I asked them also to describe their relationship with their mentor. And for the third part, which is wrapping up the interview, I have asked, I've informed them that the interview is about to end. And I asked them if they have an idea of what I could have asked them. If this is a chance for them to say things that are outside of the questions that I have asked. And it's an opportunity also to mention things that I may have missed out. And then I thank them for the interview. Now, in analyzing the data, first is for the coding and gathering of common themes, a revised method of hermeneutic phenomenological analysis used by Sloan and Bowie was used for this research. I adopted the analysis used by Sloan and Bowie. As we know, hermeneutic phenomenology does not really follow a process, but there are certain guidelines that are used. And I tried to use the process used by Sloan and Bowie, but adjusting it to my particular circumstance. So this is how I did my analysis. First is I listened to the audio recordings or watched the video recordings. The audio recordings took place during my interview in campus. But when COVID struck, when there's quarantines, we cannot meet in person. So I recorded the Google Meet interviews that we did, and I took note of certain behaviors. I listened to the audio recordings and I watched again the video recordings and took note of certain behaviors, patterns are explored, and ideas that are often mentioned are noted. Change in intonation as well, pauses, slowing down of conversation, and all of these are taken note, are noted, taken noted, are noted. Okay, and then after observing and watching the video, the transcription took place. Next is I went through the text and used Van Manen's existentials or theme types that serve as guides for reflection on the data under analysis. These four existentials are spatiality, corporeality, temporality, and relationality. So spatiality refers to the lived space of the experience of the person. Corporeality speaks of the lived body, like what a person experiences in his body. And then temporality refers to the lived time, and relationality refers to the lived human relation. And these are what I used to guide me to go through my analysis. I identified lived space, lived body, lived time, and lived human relations in the transcript, and I tried to identify those texts. Now, I then reread the text and reflecting on the identified life world themes or the existentials that I've just mentioned earlier, and then try to see if they fall under any of those 5 external regulations under OIT, well, 4 external regulations and internal motivations. So for a particular text, I'll try to see if it falls under, if it's an existential, if it falls under spatiality, corporeality, temporality, and relationality. And then I try to see, does it fall under external regulation, interjected regulation, identified regulation, integrated regulation, or internal motivation? Then I form codes. And then after forming codes from those texts that I have formed, I form them into clusters. And then from those clusters, I'm able to form themes. The analysis was used with the help of a computer software called MaxQDA Analytics Pro 2020. Now, these are the findings. So these are the themes under identified regulation. So after getting 67 codes from the 12 documents, meaning all students mentioned a text that would fall under one of the 5 categories under the identified regulation. So if you try to look earlier, identified regulation here is in the middle part here, and then integrated regulation later on I'll be mentioning is at this part. So these are the 2 most common codes that appeared in this research. And while I was putting in common themes, there are 2 main themes that I saw under identified regulation, which is the action of the mentor, which is very important, and also the areas where mentees were helped. Now, under the theme, actions of the mentor, these are the clusters that were classified. First is advice and tips, and then advice and tips given by the mentor, and also feedback. The mentor would also give feedback, and then the mentor would also give encouragement to the mentor. So these are the 3 main clusters that form the theme actions of the mentor. Now we see this arrow because the actions of the mentor are actually aligned with the areas where the mentees are helped. And these are the clusters that fall under the theme areas where mentees are helped. So they are helped in academic aspects, in their emotional well-being, the spiritual aspect was also mentioned, developing virtues or good habits. And then they're also helped in making decisions. And they're also helped in maturing because these are university students. They're in the process of from being university students to adults or someone who works. So this is also very important. They also help in interpersonal skills, in their time management, and if the mentor happens to be in a profession that the student mentee aspires for, they're also helped professionally. Now, the themes under identified regulation. Identification is a more internalized motivation as compared to introjection. I have mentioned this earlier. What describes identification? Okay, a behavior is identified when one sees the personal importance of the activity as well as the conscious valuing of it. So there is importance in the activity and the person values that activity. There is self-endorsement of goals, and the behavior is performed because it is instrumental in a beneficial outcome to the mentee. For this case, the mentees feel they are helped. So that's the beneficial outcome. So um, reaching out to their mentees is motivated because it is instrumental in gaining something which is a help from their mentor. Now, themes under identified regulation. Um, uh, I'll be mentioning here some of the texts that fall under this. Okay, this is from Felipe, not his real name. The names are anonymized. I think that one of the problems I actually asked him for help was for my Shakespeare class because it was difficult for me to understand the reading and especially reciting during class. So we see here that he got some advice and tips from his mentor and that it helped him academically. But it's not just mere academics. He was also helped emotionally because listening to Felipe in the entire transcript, he's actually a bit shy, and it gave him a little bit more confidence to recite because of the coaching of the mentor. And in fact, it also helps him in um, time management because he knows that he has to study well. So there are other aspects that are developed in the mentee. Another testament is from Eman. These are words from his mentor. So Eman is citing his mentor. He said, "You work hard to excel, and then the rewards will be sweeter since you feel that you did your best. Then you can actually do whatever you want after, and then the opportunity to offer to God. That's it. That's it." No? So we see here that the advice given by the mentor, he's also encouraging. In fact, if you try to read the rest of the transcript, it was also encouraging him to study harder. And it affected him academically, spiritually, emotionally, also growing in virtues and also decision making because is this worth studying for? And next from Beth, like one of the memorable sessions was when I failed. Well, not really failed, but I had made a big mistake in a majors class, and that really made me feel bad about myself. So I talked to Dr. Barbara about it. By the way, Dr. Barbara is not the real name. I also anonymized the names of the mentors. And here we see here she went to her mentor to seek advice, to get feedback, and also to be encouraged. Also, this is related again to her academics, and also of the other things here mentioned here. And lastly, this is from Chuck. When he was asked in what aspects his mentor has helped him. Of course, personal struggles, spiritual formation, even, it really does help to have that mentor to guide you in what you're trying to do for yourself in the university. So we see here his personal struggles, difficulties that he's going through. So he goes to his mentor for those. And these are things that he finds valuable, in his life. Now, we go to the integrated regulation. I have mentioned that the two most dominant regulations here are identified and integrated regulation. For integrated regulation, there are only 30 codes. but still this is the second to the highest, that are found in 9 documents, so 9 of the 12 documents. And the common themes found here are things that they have common between the mentor and the mentee. And then the second theme is the things integrated on the lives of the mentees, and also the actions of the mentors, the behavior of the mentors. So we see here again, the action of the mentor is vital. So what are these common things that they share? They share common backgrounds or common experiences or common interests. They could also share common values and common traits, And then what are the things that are integrated in the lives of the mentees? Well, goal setting is one. So it's integrated. The spiritual life also, something that's that they share. And also life lessons in action. These are the things that are integrated in the lives of mentees. And also virtues. So these are virtues that they learn, that they get to integrate into their lives. So again, setting goals. Maybe before they were not setting goals, but now they're setting goals. They have integrated it into their lives. In the spiritual life also, maybe they were not serious about their spiritual life, but this time, some of them, they took it more seriously. And also life lessons, lessons that they can apply, not just in theory, but things that they can put into action. And also virtues, again, good habits. And what did the mentor do? What are these actions of the mentors? Well, they help. The mentors help. The help that the mentors give them, and also the trust given by the mentor, because it's not only the mentee who trusts the mentor, but the mentee would also want to feel the trust of the mentor. The mentor trusts them. The mentor also guides them and also inspires them, and also a good. They also see the good that the mentee didn't see before. So that's another action of the mentor, that they're able to identify a certain good that the mentee rather, had not seen before. And the mentor helps the mentee realize that good. Now, these are again the words from the interviewees. This is to describe what integrated regulation is. No? So it is a more internalized motivation as compared to identification, what I described earlier. In integration, there is congruence, synthesis, and consistency of those behaviors found in identification. So in identification, we have described them earlier, but this one has more congruence, synthesis, and consistency in one's behavior. So this is more founded, more stable. The mentoring behavior is done because the mentee believes it is important and it is in harmony with his personal values, beliefs, needs, and identity. So this is from Fatima. We have the same identical experiences. We came from the same school. We both have strict parents, and those private stuff I can talk to her about. So here we see that among the common things here mentioned, they have similar background and similar experiences also. Here from Amanda, right now I'm starting to think that maybe my relationship with my mentor is so good because we have the same values. Again, common thing here is that they have the same values. And lastly, Amos, I think Dr. Albert and I are quite, how do you say, have higher degrees of initiative. So these are common traits. And there are other things here that would fall under the other themes. Conclusion. Why are mentees motivated to seek out their mentors for mentoring sessions? It is mostly due to assistance and help that they need at that time. These motivations are primarily identified regulation and secondarily integrated regulation. So we see here that they are motivated to seek out their mentors because of being assisted and the help. They needed help at that time. So again, for primarily identified regulation, the theme here, the common themes here are actions of the mentors, and then the areas where the mentees are helped. And then for integrated regulation, we have 3 themes: the common things that the mentor and the mentee share, the things integrated on the lives of mentees, and then the actions of the mentors. These are things that they think are important to them personally. They have identified with this as something very important in their lives. These are integrated in their values and in congruence with the other aspects of their lives. For the recommendation, for mentoring programs, these results can help guide them in developing their mentoring program, especially training modules for new mentors and in recapacitating mentors with new skills, giving focus on the needs of the mentees, such as skills development relevant to their specific circumstances, will greatly benefit the mentees. The knowledge of building relationships and the later focus on skills development will greatly push the effectiveness of the mentoring program. Second recommendation for educational psychologists: to study how the motivations of mentees to seek out mentoring can affect their academic performance. They can check for how motivations in seeking out mentoring sessions can affect their motivations in learning. They can also look into how pro-social behavior can affect the inclination of mentees to become mentors themselves, as evidenced by the mentors in the study who used to be mentees when they were students. Some of the mentors here were also interviewed, and they were mentees themselves before they became mentors. The educational psychologist can also guide the educational institutions on aligning the mentoring program with the mission vision of the educational institution and their objectives. And lastly, again for educational psychologists, in collaboration with guidance counselors, a study on how they can integrate a formal or informal mentoring program in their schools to help them address the needs of students who may not yet need more specialized skills from counselors and psychologists. This may need further study on the capacity of the school, the teachers, and the guidance office. Before I end, I would like to acknowledge the University of Asia and the Pacific for allowing me to conduct this study, and also for the Private Education Assistance Committee for funding my research. That is all. Thank you very much for listening and have a great day.